Erick 877-973-7425. I'm very glad to have you with me this morning. Happy birthday to Bruce Thompson, state senator from North Georgia. It is his birthday today. We have to deal with impeachment. I want to do something this morning. I really thought about, well, let me just be honest with you up front. I don't really care about this impeachment. And a lot of people care passionately about it on both sides. I don't care at this point. You know, I wrote after the January 6th thing, impeaching. But I want to dwell on the but. I want to talk to you about impeachment, and I want to do something here. I trust the genius of my audience to be able to bear with me as I trudge through a point, slog through a point. Hopefully I have enough trust and intellectual honesty with my audience. I can do what must be done and say what must be said in a way that ultimately, though you may get halfway through and you may be ready to set me on fire, you'll at least let me get to the point. I want you, if you will, to look at this from a nonpartisan lens. I don't know that that's possible anymore. I don't know that people can do that, but just bear with me here. In 2016, Democrats were passionately committed to the fact that Russia stole the election and Donald Trump was a Russian agent. Many of them to this day still believe it. It has never been true, and it is not true. It is a Democrat farce. It is a mythology that keeps them from having to acknowledge what a terrible candidate Hillary Clinton was. It's not true. And the Democrats ultimately impeached Donald Trump for a tangentially related issue related to a Ukrainian phone call with tie-ins to Hunter Biden. And we now know that Hunter Biden actually is under investigation. In fact, we know this morning that Joe Biden's administration is firing all of the Republican-appointed U.S. attorneys except the U.S. Attorney of Delaware, so that there's nothing untoward, improper, no suggestions of scandal with him investigating Hunter Biden. He is leading the investigation. Democrats were convinced that Trump was corrupt. They are still convinced Trump is corrupt. They are convinced he is a menace to society. Fast forward to 2020, and the Republicans begin claiming that the election's going to be stolen, the fix is in, the Democrats aren't going to stop, and things come to pass. And every single thing is twisted ever so slightly to be truth of a stolen election. Now, I need you to bear with me to make a couple of points here, some of which you may take issue with, but the first point is that there really wasn't a stolen election. I know some of you disagree. You have the President of the United States, though, for 2 months, even though there was no stolen election, convince a lot of people, including some of you, that the election was stolen. You will note that in 60-some-odd cases, many before Trump judges, the Trump campaign lost them all, and never once did they argue the election was stolen or that there was fraud in the election. In fact, for all the talk about fraud in the election, it was never argued by the Trump team in court that there was fraud. Some outside groups tried to make that case, and they were thrown out of court mostly by Trump-appointed judges. But for 2 months, the president told people that the Democrats were going to do this. It was going to be stolen. And along those lines, running parallel to the president's arguments, was QAnon and the like, saying the same thing. The deep state was trying to take back. Donald Trump was God's appointed, his anointed, his Messiah, that everybody's got to stand with the president. You got to fight. If the Democrats lost, they would be fighting in the same way. This is all about fighting. We've got to fight. We've got to stand. We've got to do something. And all of these groups intersect on January 6th, where the president speaks to a group that includes the Proud Boys, includes the QAnon people, includes some of his core supporters, and he tells them, let's walk up to the Capitol, the Electoral College. They're counting the Electoral College votes. Let's walk up there. I'll be with you. Let's go make our voices heard. And some malevolent factions used that as the prompt to storm the Capitol violently. The Democrats say that the President of the United States, and some Republicans would say the President of the United States, knowingly or not, inspired the mob, incited them to violence to storm the Capitol. The Democrats impeached him. The rules of the Senate require that they consider impeachment. The rules of the Senate don't allow the Senate to set aside an impeachment from the House. Many of the Republicans who now say you can't impeach a former president actually were making legal cases years ago that, yes, you could. After Richard Nixon, the impeachment process began and he resigned. Many of the very Republican scholars now arguing you can't do the conviction, you can't do the trial, were arguing after Nixon that, yes, actually, you can do the trial. Partisanship overcomes intellectual honesty. People change their positions. And that leads me to where we need to go. A year ago, when Mitch McConnell advanced the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump in the United States Senate, Senator Chuck Schumer declared that it would not be a real impeachment trial because there were no witnesses going to be called. It would be a sham. It would be a farce. There are people out there who legitimately believe the President of the United States incited the mob to storm the Capitol. There are people out there who legitimately believe the president spent 2 months manufacturing a lie, the big lie, the Democrats want to call it, and members of the media want to call it, the big lie, that there was no actual stolen election, there was no actual theft, but the president continued with his allies to pursue this. They manufactured the stories about Dominion voter systems. Some of you still believe that the Dominion voter system machines stole the vote for Joe Biden, even though these companies are now suing for billions with a B. Those who made those arguments, they wouldn't be doing that if they were worried about discovery, and it's not true. The Democrats believe this needs to happen. There needs to be accountability. You're going to hear that a lot this week. There's got to be accountability. There must be accountability. The problem is there's not going to be accountability this week. And no. It's not because the Democrats can't get the Republicans to vote. I know if you're a progressive now that I've made the people on my side mad at me by pointing these things out, let's deal with reality. And reality is where the Democrats are going to get very mad, where the left will be livid with me, where the partisans who want Donald Trump impeached and banned from ever running for office again, this is where they will become very angry with me. And all I'm doing is telling them as much truth as I've just told the people on my side. By Senator Chuck Schumer's own standards, this impeachment trial that he's about to oversee as majority leader is a sham. There will be no witnesses called. In 2020, let me read you quotes from Chuck Schumer. So far, neither Senator McConnell nor any Republican senator has articulated a single good reason why the trial shouldn't have these witnesses or these documents, Schumer said in 2020. Trials have witnesses. That's what trials are all about, he said. What is a trial with no witnesses and no documents? It's a sham trial. There are clearly coordinated talking points today that they don't need witnesses because all of them were witnesses, except a year ago, Chuck Schumer said, Senate Democrats believe strongly the trial must be fair, and it's very important that the American people judge it to be fair. A fair trial is one where senators get all the facts and one that allows them to adjudicate the case impartially. If they're saying that the senators themselves are the witnesses, then they're saying the senators themselves can't really be impartial here because they are involved emotionally or otherwise. This isn't a trial. It's not designed to be a trial. It's going to be a spectacle. It is performance art to scratch an itch by the Democrats and placate their base and members of the media. And that's important because there are a lot of members of the media, including some people who I consider friends, who are so livid about what happened on January 6th, they think there must be repercussions, and they will be on television today in high dudgeon over the fact that this is all about accountability and the righteousness of the cause, and they will be ignoring Chuck Schumer's own words that a trial without witnesses is a sham. This is not about convicting the president of the United States or even trying. They could give it the old college try, but they're not even trying. This is about defining the Republican Party as being tied to Donald Trump. They want to tie Donald Trump around the Republicans' neck and dare them to publicly repudiate him in some way. Members of the media and the right and the left, they will puff up their chests in righteous indignation over what's going on now. Some will say he deserves it. Some will say the GOP deserves it. Some will say they deserve each other. Some will say a pox on all their houses. Some will say the GOP is broken. Some will say it's irreconcilable. It's not fixable. It must be sent to the ash heap of history. And they're not even going to try to do that today. There were a lot of Republican legal minds after Richard Nixon resigned who argued at the time in writing that Nixon's impeachment could still go forward even though he resigned, and he could still be convicted. And for political expedience now, a lot of them have flip-flopped. They're now saying, oh, no, pay no attention to me then, pay attention to me now. We have historic precedent of the United States Senate in following through with an impeachment trial of someone who had left office. It wasn't a president, but they've done it before. There is precedent for this. But at the same time, while I'm pointing this out, we should at least be intellectually honest enough to point out that a year ago, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats collectively said you've got to have witnesses for there to be a real trial or it's a sham. And now they're saying, nope, forget that. Whether you want to hear it or not, arguably the former president of the United States incited that mob. A woman was shot and killed. A police officer died. Other people died. There really should be an accounting for what happened. And that should, in my opinion, involve Donald Trump. This is not going to be that accounting. This is not going to be a trial worth even considering. The Senate wants to move on as quickly as possible. The Democrats want to move on. They got to go through the performance art. They want to make it political. Chuck Schumer wants to do this and try to tar and feather the Republicans so he can stay majority leader for more than 2 years. He's desperate to be majority leader for longer than that. The Senate rules don't allow them to just ignore an impeachment. They got to have the trial. And all it's going to be is a sham, according to Chuck Schumer. According to his own words, this is a sham. Neither side really wants to do this. In fact, in 2020, the Republicans didn't even cut a deal on the rules with the Democrats. The Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, came to a bipartisan consensus on the rules. And there's all sorts of high-minded articles today all over the press about here's how the Democrats will deploy their impeachment rules to make it super painful on the Republicans and make them deal with this. Except they're not going to call the witnesses. They're not going to call the Capitol Hill police officers to describe what they saw. They're not going to call members of the House to describe what they saw. They're not going to bring up the QAnon shaman dude who's in Washington D.C. with an organic diet. Nope. They're not going to call him up. He's in town. He's in jail. They know where he is. They're not going to call him. He's been saying he was following Donald Trump, but they're not going to bring him up. We now know in the last 24 hours, there were multiple people in the White House who were telling various senators, including Ben Sasse, who is on record saying it, that multiple staffers to the president were shocked and appalled by the president's behavior on January 6th, that the president was cheering on the people storming the Capitol and was amazed and angered that no one else in the White House was as excited as he was by what was going on. We don't know who the names of these staffers are. They're not calling these people as witnesses. There will be no witnesses. Senate Democrats are essentially admitting it's a waste of time. So all of you who think there should be an accounting, scream your moral indignation about January 6th. You're right. I've already written about this. I've already written my views on this. But you should be screaming at the Democrats because they're abandoning their own standard for what constitutes a legitimate trial just to get it over with and move on. Chuck Schumer in 2020. Senate Democrats believe strongly the trial must be fair, and it's very important that the American people judge it to be fair. A fair trial is one where senators get all the facts and one that allows them to adjudicate the case impartially What a trial with no witnesses is a sham trial. That was then. Now he just wants to move on and maybe score some political points along the way. There will be no accountability.
Well connected and well respected. It's Erick Erickson.
It's predictable to me at this point. The hate mail that I can get on stuff, the number of people who are upset. One, by me saying that it is arguable the president incited the mob, and others by saying this won't be an accountability. I'm learning something about current human nature. We live in an age of performance artists. And I think that we should resist being performance artists. But essentially, that's what's going on today with this impeachment. And it's why I don't really expect to spend a ton of time moving forward covering impeachment. In fact, I got asked to cover it on my evening show, and we're going to put it in one of these smaller clock segments just because, I mean, it's a foreordained outcome. He will not be convicted. The Democrats who said it was a sham a year ago to have no witnesses will not have any witnesses now, which means they think this is a sham. It's performance art because there are a bunch of angry people out there and they need their itch scratched. And so this is what they're going to do to scratch that itch. They're going to do the performance art and move on from there. They're going to do a dog and pony show to make Democrats and the hosts of CNN and MSNBC feel good about themselves that they did something. My goodness, I was thinking last night. I would love to have some more advertisers on this program. If you want to advertise, drop us a line. We need some more advertisers here. I was thinking last night, the one thing I miss about my TV contract is they actually do pay you well. And I'm working to get out of some remaining debts, and it would be nice income. I don't make any income off this program. And then I thought last night, but dear Lord, it wouldn't be worth it to be on particularly if I was on CNN this week, to listen to all the overwrought rhetoric about how this is accountability and necessary. I feel like I would be on TV sticking a pin in their balloon, popping it, bursting their bubble, saying this isn't accountability, this is performance art. There is no accountability here. There will be no witnesses to bring pressure on the Republicans. There will be no Capitol Hill police officers testifying as to what they saw. There will be none of it. There will be no White House aides coming to testify what they saw the president. There will be none of it. They will have rumor and innuendo spread all over TV. You will have all of these hosts. You'll have the poor old the CNN weekend crew will be picking on Fox News for its lack of coverage and all upset that Fox News didn't cover the impeachment sufficiently to the standards of CNN. You'll have all the people at MSNBC giving daily highlights and sound bites. What you won't have is any effort to persuade anyone not already convinced. You will have no witnesses. You will have no documents. You will have arguments and yelling and chest puffing, and you will have high soaring rhetoric. And then it'll be done. And we'll move on. And Donald Trump will probably come out of this looking better than the Democrats. In fact, there's a worry that he will. There is a worry that he will. And some Democrats think that it's actually a good thing, because the more Donald Trump comes out of this smelling like roses, the better it is for the Democrats, because they'll ultimately be able to see a rebound of hate and tie him to the Republicans. But there won't be a conviction. There won't be anything. It's a waste of everybody's time. And they know it. And the reason they're screaming at people like me for pointing out it's not about accountability and it's a waste of time is because they can't bring themselves to admit it, even though they know it. Again, to quote Chuck Schumer, direct quote by Charles Schumer, now Majority Leader of the United States Senate. What is a trial with no witnesses and no documents?
30.
It's a sham trial. That's what we've got. Now, I've covered impeachment. I think I'll move on to other things. There are all sorts of other stories that need to be talked about, including the LA Times columnist. I told you guys I was going to get to this yesterday. I never did. It still needs to be gotten to. And then there's the meltdown of the New York Times newsroom. I need to confess a sin. I have sinned. I stayed up until 2 o'clock this morning watching trash TV. Bridgerton on Netflix. I'm sorry. Please don't think less of me. Please don't make me turn in my man card. I'm sorry. I kind of enjoyed it. Oh, but it's trash. It is trash TV. It really is. It really is. Charlie, just don't even start. All right. The phone number, if you would like to call in and be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. We need to move on to really important stories, including this is Chicago's WGN9. Remember WGN9. Oh, good. That makes me feel better. I'm glad you did. This is why you had to go kill hogs last week. I may need to go kill hogs now, having sat through and watched the whole thing. Tessica Brown. This is the important story of the day, folks. This is the most important story of the day. My buddy Brent insists that I move on from talking about impeachment and move on to this. It is the most important story. It is from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a native of Louisiana. These are my people. Tessica Brown went viral on Instagram. She posted a video about a bad idea. She decided to use Gorilla Glue industrial strength adhesive spray to hold down her hair. On February 3rd on Instagram, Tessica Brown informed her followers and many others what happened to her hair after she used Gorilla Glue adhesive spray to hold her hair down because she ran out of her usual hairspray, got to be. She says her hair has been stuck in this hairstyle for a month. I didn't have any more gotta be hairspray. So I used this Gorilla Glue spray. Bad idea. My hair doesn't move. I've washed my hair 15 times and it doesn't move, she said in this video. Are those eyelashes? Did she do that? Did she get it in her? Oh dear. She's precious. On February 6th, Brown posted on her Instagram page a picture of St. Bernard's Hospital in Chalmette, Louisiana. Notice, I'm a native. I can say Chalmette, Louisiana. Where she went in hopes of getting the hardened adhesive removed from her hair. She spent 22 hours in the emergency room. Healthcare workers used acetone and sterile water to loosen the adhesive, which burned her scalp and hardened moments later. Gorilla Glue released a statement via Instagram regarding Brown's experience using their product as an alternative for hairspray. They emphasize that the spray adhesive states on the warning label to not get in eyes, on skin, or on clothing. We are aware of the situation and we are very sorry to hear about the unfortunate incident that Miss Brown experienced using our spray adhesive on her hair. This is a unique situation because this product is not indicated for use in or on hair, as it is considered permanent. Our spray adhesive states in the warning label, do not swallow, do not get in eyes, on skin, or on clothing. But it didn't say hair. It is used for craft, home, auto, or office projects to mount things to surfaces such as paper, cardboard, wood, laminate, and fabric. After seeing Bridgerton, I could use not to hear the word mount. We are glad to see in her recent video that Miss Brown has received medical treatment from her local medical facility and wish her the best. Now, celebrities have started following her page. She's got access to celebrities now. A Hollywood plastic surgeon has offered to take care of her. Michael O. Bing has told her he can end her situation using medical-grade glue remover in a procedure that could take 3 days. She's raised more than $13,000 and is set to fly out to Los Angeles this Wednesday. The procedure is going to cost $12,500, but he's going to do it for free over those several days. She went viral on TikTok and Instagram. She said it was a bad idea. Gorilla Glue tweeted its sympathies over the unfortunate situation, but stressed it was not wise to do. And now, do you want the punchline? After her unsuccessful experience in the St. Bernard Hospital emergency room, she is now looking into suing the adhesive company, alleging the labeling on their product is misleading. The labeling on their product, incredibly strong, 100% tough. You know what they should do? They should give her a TV ad campaign for Gorilla Glue. So I'm looking at the spray adhesive. Here's what the bottle says. Heavy duty bond. Repositionable. Clear color. Indoor-outdoor controlled spray. Wide pad nozzle. Multi-purpose bonds to wood, metal, fabric, foam, plastic, paper, glass, leather, and more. Okay. Well, you see, here's the problem. It doesn't specifically say not to use on hair. It says not to use it on skin, not to get it on your skin, but it doesn't say anything about your hair. It doesn't see clearly. It doesn't say anything about hair, only skin. So she's gonna sue now. Look, I'm looking at their safety page. The safety data sheet for Gorilla Spray adhesive may displace oxygen and cause suffocation. Extremely flammable, causes skin irritation, causes serious eye irritation, may cause drowsiness or dizziness. Avoid breathing the vapors. Wash your hands, forearms, and exposed areas. Wear protective gloves, protective clothing, and eye protection. If on skin, wash with plenty of water. If inhaled, remove person to fresh air. If in eyes, rinse cautiously with water for several minutes. Specific treatment. If skin irritation occurs, get medical advice. If eye irritation occurs, get medical advice. Take off contaminated clothing. Store in a well-ventilated place. There's nothing about hair. There's nothing about not using it as hairspray. Therefore, they are responsible for her problems. They're going to be sued. And you know the sad thing here, honestly. The sad thing. Mine just said, yep, I was out of Viagra and used Gorilla Glue. It works. Kept it locked in place. No, the sad thing here is that she'll probably get them to settle with her just as an irritant lawsuit. It'll cost them more with their lawyers to go to trial than it will be just to throw some money at this woman. They should put her in a commercial. Can you imagine the commercial? Can you imagine this woman in a commercial for Gorilla Glue? Hi, my name is Tessica Brown. I was out of hairspray one day, so I used Gorilla Glue spray, and guess what? It worked so well that 2 months later, my hair still hadn't moved, and I was going to sue them, but they put me in this commercial instead. We are a nation filled with stupid people. I think one day we're going to have when you go to ewerickson.com, we're going to have a store. And we're going to sell stuff. And one of the things that I am insistent we sell is a coffee cup that says people are stupid. Because I think not a day goes by, at least not a week goes by, where I don't say people are stupid. Because people are stupid. Tessica Brown is stupid. Tessica Brown is a dumb person. Tessica Brown decided to put Gorilla Glue spray in her hair to hold it in place, and it did exactly what she wanted, and now she's going to sue because it did it better than what she wanted, and she wasn't smart enough, brilliant enough, thoughtful enough to think, this is what super glue. And so she just might sue. God save us from these people. I wonder if she votes.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson. $33777 now.
Why not just shave your head? I should move on from Gorilla Glue woman, but why not just shave your head and start over? I'm okay. Let's move on to Crazy Town. And no, so woman gets Gorilla Glue, uses it as hairspray, and a month later it's still there and she can't move her hair, and that's not Crazy Town. This is Crazy Town. Someone sent me this. Someone I know sent me this and want to know, is this really true? Well, no, it's not really true. And this is circulating online. Goodness gracious. So what is, I'm someone seeking, nope, I don't want to talk about that here. So there's something called We the Media. I want to read for you I don't even know what it is, whether it's is it a tweet, an Instagram, something. Listen to this. Watch the courts. President Trump still has several lawsuits pending, which could flip the 2020 election on its head. This is not hopium. This is fact. Opium. This is fact. If a federal court or state Supreme Court rules in favor of President Trump in one or two of these lawsuits, perhaps the U.S. military would have the legal cover it is looking for to make its move to save the republic. I need to keep on permanent file the Billy Madison clip that we are all stupider for having listened to this. This is, people are circulating that. Y'all need to understand, people believe this. People believe this. People are circulating this. Watch the courts. President Trump still has several lawsuits pending, which could flip the 2020 election on its head. This is not hopium. This is fact. If a federal court or state Supreme Court rules in favor of President Trump in one or two of these lawsuits, perhaps the U.S. military would have the legal cover it is looking for to make its move to save the republic. Can we do a sentence diagram, please? President Trump still has several lawsuits pending, which actually should be that, could flip the 2020 election on its head. This is fact. Actually, it's not. The president's campaign has no more lawsuits. They've dismissed all of their lawsuits. There are some outside lawsuits, most of which have no chance at all, none of which will impact the federal election for the president of the United States. If a federal court, now we've gone from this is fact, these lawsuits could flip, and now if a federal court or a state Supreme Court rules in favor of President Trump in one or two of these lawsuits, perhaps, notice, weasel word here, perhaps the U.S. military would have the legal cover it is looking for. The statement of fact here, a presumed statement of fact, the U.S. military is looking for legal cover to save the republic. I submit to you that if the military makes a move to overturn the inauguration of Joe Biden, they won't be saving the republic. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you for getting me that. Now the question is there an ad that we have to sit through first? Yes, there is. And then we can get to it. Y'all, I'm telling you, there are so many stupid people out there, and they believe stuff like this. This is why the internet ultimately is bad, because people get online and they're stupid.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I've got to keep that audio file. I used to have it, and I guess I lost it when I switched my soundboard, because I need to play that more often for these idiots who actually believes these things. And now the guy circulating this online, you should know, is a Torah restoration minister, follower of Yeshua the Messiah, obedient to Torah. And he's circulating this, and other people are seeing it and they're circulating it, and some of them really believe it. Look, I admire the optimism and the willingness to hope, but at some point you have to acknowledge that these people are nuts, that people genuinely are insane. It is not just the woman using hairspray or glue to hold her hair in place. It is these idiots. And yes, they're idiots. People are stupid. We got to make that coffee mug happen. Now, let us move on, shall we? Let us move on. Pete Buttigieg. Remember Pete? He's now got a Twitter account, Secretary Pete. He's so relatable, Secretary Pete. You know what Secretary Pete wants? We're in a global pandemic. Airlines are suffering. There is not, however, a single documented case of anyone spreading COVID by flying on an American airline where masks are imposed and required. And they tell us the masks work. And I actually happen to be in the majority of people who believe the masks do work. Again, it's not about you not having the virus. It's about you having the virus. You put on the mask and you have the virus, and you're around other people, you minimize their risk of infection. And oftentimes you don't know that you have the virus. And what we do know with 100% certainty, in fact, every time you get on Delta now, the pilot gives you this spiel about how they've got better air conditioning, the surgical grade quality air conditioners that flow down. They recycle the air so quickly, it's all within your immediate area. We've got documented cases of people who had COVID who were flying and wore a mask, and not a single person around them got COVID. We know all of these things. This is the science. These are the news stories for the past year. This is the science. This is Dr. Fauci. This is everybody who's been on TV talking about this for a year, that you get on a plane, you're safer on a plane than you are in your local grocery store when it comes to the virus. You wear a mask, and the air gets recycled so frequently on a plane, so many minutes or seconds it gets recycled. It's all within your immediate area. Most of these airlines like Delta, they're keeping middle seats empty anyway. They're spreading people out on planes. They've got reduced capacity, and they're hemorrhaging money. They are about to go bankrupt. All these airlines are in terrible positions. And here comes Secretary Pete saying, we may require you to get a COVID test before you get on a plane domestically. Do you know it's still hard to get COVID tests? It's easier than it used to be, but it's still kind of hard. And now they're going to make you get one. And by the way, the rapid tests aren't nearly as reliable. Lot of false negatives with the rapid test. So the odds are, if they make everybody do it, there will be people who have the virus who are able to get on planes because they get a false negative. And guess what? They're not going to spread the virus on the plane. Do you know why they're not going to spread the virus on the plane? Because as my favorite Delta pilots, my beloved Delta pilots always tell us, the air filters on these planes that they fly is filtered so quickly and so well, it's better than a surgery operating theater in a local hospital. It's cleaner than your hospital surgical center's air conditioning. You're not getting the virus. There are no documented cases of it. So why is the federal government wanting to kill the airline industry? Because that's what will happen. It'll be such a pain in the butt. It will be so inconvenient for people. Overwhelmingly, people will not get on airplanes. Already, people aren't getting on airplanes. I've been on airplanes multiple times in the last couple of months, and the airports are mostly ghost towns. I had to go several weeks ago. I went up to Atlanta to fly out, and everything closes like 8 o'clock. I had a 9:30 flight. It was delayed. I got to where I was going, landed. It was almost 11 p.m., and I was starving and had to go to the hotel because even the 24-hour McDonald's was closed when I got to where I was going. It shut down at 11 o'clock. And the airport in Atlanta, you could wait a long line for a sit-down restaurant, but all the fast food places were closed. I mean, there was nobody there, and everything was closed. We're killing the airline industry. Now they want to make you get a COVID test before you get on a domestic flight when there's so much documentation that shows those aren't vectors for transmission. It's nuts. It's actually about global warming and the like. They're happy to kill this industry. You know, they don't want you to fly. They don't want you to travel because when you travel, unless you're in a Tesla, well, you're using fossil fuels, and that's bad for the environment. So they can hide behind COVID and make it about that and wipe out this industry and claim they're saving the planet. Hello, welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you'd like to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Sure appreciate you being with me today. We need to talk about Brian Kemp and Georgia. I continue. In fact, let me just say, if you are one of these people, and we'll probe questioning if you call, but if you're one of these people and you claim to be a Republican who thinks you would rather have Stacey Abrams than Brian Kemp, feel free to call 877-973-7425. I continue to encounter people who say these things. And I continue to not actually believe that it is true. I continue to believe that the people telling me this are emotional ninnies. I do not believe there is there are a lot of crazy people out there right now. There are a lot of stupid people. If you're just tuning in the last hour, we spent more time than I intended on Tessica Brown, a Baton Rouge, Louisiana woman who used Gorilla Glue spray to keep her hair in place when she was out of her regular hairspray. And more than a month later, she's thinking of suing Gorilla Glue for working too well, really. It didn't say don't use on your hair on the bottle, so she wants to sue. And I'm sure there are people like that who voted for Brian Kemp in 2018, and now they are emotionally butthurt over the election, and they blame him, despite him having nothing to do with it. They've believed all the arguments because they can't even bother to read the Georgia Constitution and understand how it works. And so they're like, yeah, I'll take Stacey Abrams over Brian Kemp. There are people that emotional right now. You know, one of my frustrations, as an aside, tangent. One of the things that I have discovered that I believe to be true, and I really haven't discovered it, it's just, it's been boiling up in the dark depth recesses of my mind, and it has come to fruition as a formed thought. There are a lot of people who were not involved in politics prior to Donald Trump getting elected. And they love Donald Trump. They consider themselves the party of Trump, not the GOP. They're not the party of Lincoln. They're not the party of Reagan. They're the party of Trump. Only Trump. And because he won in 2016, and so many people, myself included, didn't think he would, and they were convinced he would, and they were right, that they have concluded with no lack of humility that they actually know more than others, and they've never been involved in the processes of elections or running for office or anything, but now they consider themselves geniuses, real men of genius. They could be in a Bud Light commercial from back in the day when they were actually good commercials. And they've concluded they know how the process works, and that Donald Trump does know more than anyone else. And so if he says something, it must be true, and they can believe it without ever having to question it and sleep well at night knowing that. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I'm just increasingly aware that this is a legitimate issue, and these are legitimate people who are legitimately out there and legitimately believe this. And so when the president of the United States, Donald John Trump, says that Brian Kemp could do X, Y, or Z, they don't even question. There's no reason to go to the primary documents and see for themselves. They trust him. Many of these people have gone down rabbit holes. The number of people who tell me they do their own research, and when you ask them, are you reading the primary documents? They want to know, what is a primary document? No, they're reading some fringy website none of you have ever heard of in the dark recesses of the internet. And they've decided it's true because it tells them what they already believe to be true. And after all, they got 2016 right. So my goodness gracious, they've got this right too. So when Donald Trump tells them that Brian Kemp could call a special election and change the rules for the special for the runoff. Well, it must be so. When he tells them Brian Kemp could intervene and do something about the November election, it must be so. Now, any student of law and public policy in Georgia who actually bothers to read the primary documents knows that's not so. I should pause here and say some people will be listening to me right now and say, why are you being so mean? It's not that I'm being mean. It's that some people do need occasionally to be reminded they're actually not as smart as they think they are. I myself must be occasionally reminded of it. It is why I engaged in something called marriage. Some people think they have all the answers and they really don't. And there are people who are convinced that Brian Kemp is to blame for the November election, not the state party chair, not the state party's lack of a grassroots efforts, not the state party's lack of get out the vote efforts, not the state party abandoning an aggressive absentee balloting campaign, not the president's campaign. Nope. It's got to be Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger who are to blame. They will tell you Brad Raffensperger entered a consent decree that changed Georgia law, and that's simply not true. They can't even find the consent decree because there is no consent decree. It does not exist. There is a settlement with Stacey Abrams' group. And the settlement comes not because they changed state law, but because a judge ruled that the Secretary of State was misinterpreting state law. So state law did not change. A judge forced Brad Raffensperger to change his interpretation of state law. They lost the case and had to settle. The judge allowed them to settle instead of imposing his will on them. But you never know that if you listen to the outside voices chiming in. The outside voices chiming in believe Brian Kemp could have called a special session of the legislature and changed the rules. You had everyone from the president to Marjorie Taylor Greene to members of the Republican Party in Georgia saying that, and it's simply not true. How do I know? Well, because I know how to read Supreme Court cases, where the Supreme Court has ruled both here in Georgia, in the Georgia Supreme Court, and nationally with the United States Supreme Court, that you can't do that. If you change the rules right before a runoff, you have to wait until after the runoff to implement those rules. You don't have to believe me. You can believe the Georgia Supreme Court. You can believe the United States Supreme Court. You don't have to believe it. You can read, again, you can read primary documents. So all of the things they said Brian Kemp could do, he couldn't do. And all the things they said he did not do. And yet they are still convinced that it's Brian Kemp's fault. So Brian Kemp has $6 million in the bank now. He's got $6 million in the bank to run for re-election. And this time we'll be running as his own man, not as Trump's guy. Donald Trump is pledging to defeat Brian Kemp in a primary. He's pledging to find someone to run against him. I've heard floated the names Marjorie Taylor Greene, Doug Collins, Vernon Jones. There are all sorts of names of all sorts of people who claim they will run against Brian Kemp. Now, interestingly enough, the polling shows that 75% of Republicans, actually, I'm sorry, it's 66% of Republicans, roughly a third of Republicans are angry with Brian Kemp, and 2/3 of Republicans support Brian Kemp. Well, guess what? If Brian Kemp gets the support of 66% of the Republican vote, there will be people who say that's almost the mark of the beast, that's 6-6, but they won't beat him at the ballot box. What they will do is they will force him to burn through his $6 million, and then he'll have to raise more against Stacey Abrams. And some of these people would prefer Stacey Abrams to Brian Kemp. They would prefer Stacey Abrams, and again, because it's emotional, it's not logical. They would prefer Stacey Abrams because it is, it's payback, plain and simple. And again, these are people who don't view themselves as Republican. They don't view themselves as particularly partisan, except Donald Trump. And because of that, they don't care about the fate of the party or the state. They care about the fate of Donald Trump. They view themselves as part of a Trump alliance. And listen, they're entitled to do it. They are absolutely entitled to do it. Many of these people, I suspect, may not even turn up and vote. They didn't turn up and vote and handed the state to Warnock and Ossoff. But if they decide that they're going to primary Brian Kemp, you, me, everybody needs to understand what they're doing is they are potentially handing the state over to the Democrats because they've decided that someone who will agree with them on 70, 80, 90% of policy, but isn't a fan of Donald Trump or is now supposedly an enemy of the president's is still worse than a Stacey Abrams who agrees with them on maybe 5% of what they want. The point here is that the GOP in Georgia has to figure out how to get on the same page and get these people on the page with them. And I don't know that they can. And there are enough in both camps who hate each other that they may not want to get on the same page. And then that begs the question, what do you do about Raphael Warnock? So he's already on record now of voting to pack the Supreme Court, a position he refused to take during the campaign. He's now taken in the Senate. He voted against a measure by Tom Cotton that would have stopped packing the courts. And then you move forward and you've got this situation with the impeachment where he will vote to impeach and convict and bar from office Donald Trump. Well, they won't get to the barring for office phase because they won't have enough votes to convict, but he'll do that. And so who do you want? Do you want him? Do you want Stacey Abrams, people who would gladly convict Donald Trump, or do you want a guy like Brian Kemp? Here's my personal preference on the Senate race, and this is going to make a lot of friends of mine mad at me to say. Doug Collins should run. I like Doug Collins. He lost, and there are Kemp and Loeffler folks who think that had he not won, Loeffler could have gotten out of it without a runoff. And I'm actually in that camp. I think that had Doug Collins not run, Loeffler would have been able to consolidate the field with a message that played more than just to Trump voters, and she would have probably gotten out of it without a runoff. She would have consolidated the GOP going in. And Collins there made her have to run a different type of race. And so, yeah, I do think Doug Collins has some responsibility there. But Doug had every right to run. I disagreed with him. I didn't vote for him, but he had every right to do it. I don't think that Loeffler, with 2 years, can or shows any signs thus far of trying to brand herself in some way more independent of the president. So let Doug Collins run. Let him do it. He's good on the campaign trail. He's not nearly as Trumpy as a lot of people think he is. He's got a message to sell. Some Democrats, frankly, like him. Let him do it. Let him do it. I would support him. I think he should. We don't have ironically, Georgia Republicans should have a very deep bench, and I don't know that we do. If David Perdue wants to run against Warnock, he probably can. I don't know that he wants to. If not, let Doug. And I think there should be a party compromise. The governor will support Doug, and Doug will support the governor. And unite the wings of the party in that way, with that ticket, whether they're happy about it or not. The Democrats are going to have a united front between Warnock and Abrams. The Republicans need a united front, and they need to unite the wings of the party. They are deeply divided. I do not think the governor should be primaried. I think he's done a good job. A lot of the people who are mad at him now over things he could not control and decisions he didn't make because he could not make them, they were perfectly happy when he was willing to open up the government when even Donald Trump attacked him. I think it's time to start thinking, how do we move beyond this? And what I would offer up is you run a united ticket with Doug Collins for the Senate and Brian Kemp for governor, and make everybody get on the same page. And if they don't want to, we'll push them aside. And let's win this thing, because we got to stop Abrams and we got to beat Warnock.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick Erickson.
Hi there, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I have a confession. It it pains me to have to talk about this. I don't know that I should, but I believe in being fully transparent with my audience. I sometimes overshare. I'm accused sometimes, even by family, of oversharing too much with my audience, connecting with you beyond just the news of the day. And I think I've got the mark of the beast. I got the vaccine. And I mentioned it on radio, and we've had emails ever since from people who are really sure I've got the mark of the beast now, and that I'm hellbound. There are others who believe that because I got the vaccine, they read on the internet that if I get COVID now, if I come into contact with someone with COVID, I'll immediately drop dead. That the mRNA will kill me. And so I'm apparently I'm a goner, and I'm destined for hell because I took an mRNA vaccine, which means I'll die instantly when I come into contact with someone with COVID, and it's the mark of the beast, and I will go to hell. Don't you feel better now? I want to actually, I shouldn't even have to do this, but I feel, given the number, there are people genuinely concerned about this. This is, I'm increasingly of the position that the internet is really a bad thing. You know, the Revelation, the book of Revelation is the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not the revelation of the beast or the devil or anything like that. The real mark is your outward manifestation of your faith in Christ. And the mark of the beast is an outward manifestation of your faith in something of the world. It was derived originally from Nero. The early Christians and Jews of the time were very into numerology and associating letters with numbers, and each letter of the alphabet had a number. So alpha was 1, beta is 2, and on like that. And you translate Nero into Hebrew, and the letters line up to and amount to 666. That was Nero. There are marks of the beast, and there are antichrists throughout history, not just him. There are some people who view Revelation as a fixed snapshot of that time. It's not. If you read it, it clearly is about things. It uses apocalyptic language a lot of people don't understand. But for years, there are fringe Christians, and actually some more than fringe Christians, who buy into the mark of the beast stuff, and they're always on the lookout for the mark of the beast. They're not looking for the marks of true faith in Christ. They're looking for marks of the beast. It's your social security number. It's a COVID vaccine. It's an RFID chip. It's an NFC chip. It's a chip embedded in your skin. It's the dollar bill. It's the dollar coin. It's the Democratic Party. Ronald Reagan was at one point considered the beast by some people because they thought he was going to lead to a global nuclear holocaust. If you're spending more time obsessed with the mark of the beast and making sure you don't succumb to the mark of the beast, that suggests you're worried about your faith. Now, I believe once you're saved, you're always saved. But there seem to be people who are really upset about this. And I got to tell you, the mark of the beast is presumed to be an outward manifestation of something. It's considered a mark on your forehead. And in that case, of something where you're worshiping something other than Christ. And now, bear with me here because I don't want to make you mad when I say this, but that's more akin to the Make America Great Again cap that a lot of people wear. It's an outward sign on your forehead of your worshiping of something. Now, I don't believe that's mark of the beast. I need to say that, but what I'm getting at is that a lot of people, so they take apocalyptic language, and if you're going to do that, there are a lot of people, you've got better grounds for that than a vaccine, but neither of them is applicable. The mark is a mark manifested visible to God, not to other people. And also, it is a mark of you worshiping something other than God. So if you think that the mark of the beast is a vaccine, please go consult your preacher. And if he agrees, please go to a new church. It is not that. I can't help people who come up with these weird fringy beliefs. But when you do, and when preachers talk about this stuff and they believe these things, you got to get to a new church. Worry about your soul and your relationship with the Lord, and not about a mark of the beast. Worry about your outward manifestation of your faith in God, not in some mark of the beast that people don't even understand what it's talking about. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Well, it was bound to happen. You knew it was going to happen. I hate to say I told you so. But go back. Was it? It was 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago. I said, if the Democrats were smart, what they would do as the Republican voting reform efforts come up in Georgia is they would keep their mouths shut. And whatever Republicans do, the Democrats should just say nothing. And what the Democrats would do is they would undermine Republican base voters' confidence in election reforms in Georgia. Now, just follow along with me for just a little bit here. In Georgia, 3/4 of Republican voters believe that the November election was tainted significantly enough to cast in doubt the outcome. More than 400,000 of those voters then refused to show up in January to vote, many of them having concluded that there was no point because the Democrats would steal it again. And the only solution to this is for the GOP in Georgia to make pretty significant changes to election laws so that Republican voters feel at an emotional level that they've done something to rectify the situation. Many of them wanted Brian Kemp to call a special session of the legislature between the general and the runoff to fix these things. There are multiple court rulings at the state and federal level that would have prevented those rule changes from going into effect, but many of them nonetheless wanted him to do it. Now they demand this change. The state party under David Schaefer is out with a slate of changes that the state party wants and demands to be changed. Ironically, many of them changing policies that David Schaefer himself voted for when he was in the state legislature. And by the way, members of the legislature are laughing at the state GOP, calling it a ridiculous way to essentially escape any sort of blame for a lot of things that Republican members of the state legislature blame the state party for. But the base wants something done. And so what I have said is that any changes that the state does, any of the changes that are done by the state of Georgia, by the Republicans in the legislature, signed by the governor, they will be largely superficial changes. We're not going to get rid of no excuse absentee balloting. So what we will do is actually a very good idea, which we will in some way tie photo ID to the ballot. Listen, if you want to vote in Georgia, you've got to vote with a photo ID. So put a space on the absentee ballot application where in so doing, you've got to pin in your photo ID number or your driver's license number. And then ban outside groups from sending you unsolicited absentee ballot applications. So they can't proactively be sending these to you, and they can't be they can't get you to register to vote. So the Republicans are going to do some of these things. And what I said 2 weeks ago is that Democrats should just keep their mouth shut. Because ultimately, deep down, none of these things really change a lot. It just makes people at an emotional level feel like there have been changes. And that I said, I was just helpful advice from a Republican to the Democrats. If you really want to undermine this and you really want to get Stacey Abrams elected, you keep your mouth shut. But nope, they cannot help themselves. The Democrats are coming out screaming bloody murder about this stuff. Stacey Abrams is out saying absolutely not. Stacey Abrams is out screaming at the top of her lungs saying nope, 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 nope. This is unacceptable. The Republicans are trying to steal it. You know, it's kind of funny. You've had a year where Republicans say the Democrats are going to steal it, and now suddenly you got, oh my goodness gracious, nope, the Republicans, they're the ones stealing it now. You've got that Democrat lawyer who was very successful this past year with those outside groups. He's saying we're going to sue and we're going to win. All that does is tell me that the Republicans will get their head back in the game. That tells me that the Republicans will realize that the legislature is actually doing something. When you have Stacey Abrams and that lawyer, I forget his name, starts with an N. I want to say Namias, but that's the Georgia Supreme Court Justice. When you have these people out there screaming as much as they are that the Republicans are trying to steal the election and they're trying to change the rules or they're trying to suppress the vote, I mean, this is gold for the GOP. This is gold. They should go on and implement these policy changes. But here's the thing, and this is my point here. It's time to come up with a legal strategy. If you're the Republicans, you have been outplayed in court by the Democrats. In fact, the Republicans, I remember when the Republicans used to have the best lawyers. Ben Ginsburg, who is not a Trump guy, and the GOP's kind of thrown him under the bus, that frankly, I think the Georgia GOP should hire him to advance their case for them because he agrees with a lot of these things and he's highly successful. The Republican clown show of lawyers that this past year has been embarrassing. Whatever happened to the good Republican election lawyers? They're not all Democrats now. But you got to have it, because here's what's going to happen. The Democrats will get this lawyer to come into Georgia, file the case in the Northern District of Georgia. Someone will steer the case to Amy Totenberg, who is Nina Totenberg from NPR's sister, a Barack Obama appointed judge who hates conservative election reform measures, and she'll throw it all out. They'll have to appeal to the 11th Circuit. I can't say this loudly enough, and I hope someone somewhere, one of you listening right now, please convey this to every Republican elected official and the state party. The Secretary of State is typically who would be sued. They have a headquarters in Macon. The odds are that one of these cases would be heard by a Trump-appointed judge if you preemptively filed suit in state court. Now, why would you? Well, make the same arguments the Democrats would make. File the lawsuit in the Middle District of Georgia, and the odds are you're going to get a better judge than Amy Totenberg, even if it's not a Republican-appointed judge, but the odds are you'll get a Republican-appointed judge. You may even get a Trump-appointed judge to hear your case and treat it a little more sympathetically than Amy Totenberg. I don't understand why the Republicans don't forum shop in the way the Democrats do. You got a Secretary of State's office in Middle District of Georgia. You can file your lawsuit there. Improve your chances. You should do that. Because otherwise, I know exactly what's going to happen. The Democrats will get an Obama-appointed judge to throw out the case. And the rest of it, well, it's predictable, and it will drag it out. So, there we go. I think we got to do that. Now, I don't think I need to say any more about that. I think I can move on to France. That's right, France. Y'all got to get a load of this. Will American ideas tear France apart? Some think so. This is a story in the New York Times. Yes, it's not an op-ed piece. I'm scrolling down to make sure. Nope, not an op-ed piece. This is Norimitsu Onishi, foreign correspondent on the international desk covering France out of the Paris Bureau. Get a load of this. The threat is said to be existential. It fuels secessionism, gnaws at national unity, abets Islamism, attacks France's intellectual and cultural heritage. The threat? Certain social science theories entirely imported from the United States, said President Emmanuel Macron. French politicians, high-profile intellectuals, and journalists are warning that progressive American ideas, specifically on race, gender, post-colonialism, are undermining their society. There's a battle to wage against an intellectual matrix from American universities, warned Mr. Macron's education minister. Emboldened by these comments, prominent intellectuals have banded together against what they regard as contamination by the out-of-control woke leftism of American campuses and its attendant cancel culture. I actually saw somebody, I'm kind of upset I didn't think of this one. I saw somebody online this morning refer to the wokes as woko haram. It's not a bad phrase. You know, the radical Islamist group that's into cancel culture by killing people? Woko haram. Pitted against them is a younger, more diverse guard that considers these theories as tools to understanding the willful blind spots of an increasingly diverse nation that still recoils at the mention of race, has yet to come to terms with its colonial past, and often waves away the concerns of minorities as identity politics. Disputes that would have otherwise attracted little attention are now blown up in the news and on social media. The new director of the Paris Opera, who said on Monday he wants to diversify its staff and ban blackface, has been attacked by the far-right leader Marine Le Pen, and also in Le Monde because, though German, he had worked in Toronto and had soaked up American culture for 10 years. Le Monde is the lefty publication in Paris. The publication this month of a book critical of racial studies by two veteran social scientists, Stéphane Bon and Gérard Nouriel, fueled criticism from younger scholars and has received extensive news coverage. Mr. Nouriel has said that race had become a bulldozer, crushing other subjects, adding in an email that its academic research in France was questionable because race is not recognized by the government in merely subjective data. The fierce French debate over a handful of academic disciplines on U.S. campuses may surprise those who have witnessed the gradual decline of American influence in many corners of the world. In some ways, it is a proxy fight over some of the most combustible issues in French society, including national identity and the sharing of power. In a nation where intellectuals still hold sway, the stakes are high. With its echoes of the American culture wars, the battle began inside French universities, but is playing out increasingly in the media. Politicians have been weighing in more and more, especially following a turbulent year during which a series of events called into question tenets of French society. Mass protests in France against police violence, inspired by the killing of George Floyd, challenged the official dismissal of race and systemic racism. A Me Too generation of feminists confronted both male power and older feminists. A widespread crackdown following a series of Islamist attacks raised question about France's model of secularism and the integration of immigrants from its former colonies. Some saw the reach of American identity politics and social science theories. Some center-right lawmakers pressed for a parliamentary investigation into ideological excesses at universities and singled out guilty scholars on Twitter. Mr. Macron, who has shown little interest in these matters in the past, but has been courting the right ahead of elections next year, jumped in last June, where he blamed universities for encouraging the ethnicization of social questions, amounting to breaking the republic in two. Wow. When the French realize it's bad, you know, the French, they're not the far left woke crowd that some people believe them to be. There actually is they're not conservative in the way you and I would think of conservative, but culturally, it's a fairly conservative society where it's France and all else. You cannot be, for example, in France, they don't believe you can be Muslim in French. You must be French. You can't be Jewish in French. You must be French. The French identity, it is the united identity. Charles de Gaulle one time famously said there is France and then there's Paris. And in Paris, you get hotbeds of this sort of woke culture in their academic institutions and among the young, but among the institutions in France, among the citizens outside of Paris, you get a deep level of cultural Gallic conservatism against a lot of this stuff. And you can say it's bad and all of that, but I mean, they're starting to have American wokeism pollute France now. Woko haram coming for them, cancel culture coming for them, cancel culture coming for everyone. In fact, in the New York Times, where the story is, they fired a guy for using the N-word, not because he meant it pejoratively, but he was looking to discipline someone who was alleged to have used it, and he tried to get confirmation that the guy used the N-word, and so he said, did he use that word? And he said the word, and they got rid of him for him trying to enforce discipline on someone because he dared utter the word to decide whether or not it was. The whole thing is bizarre. Cancel culture. It's coming. It's growing. And it's spreading. And the French view it as a virus. The French seem smarter on this issue than most of the American academic elite. When France is paying attention to stuff like this, we probably should. And by the way, you notice they mentioned gender in there as well. Why? Well, if you're a student of a lot of the European languages, the Romance languages and the like, they have masculine and feminine words. Le and la. Le is masculine, la is feminine in France. The entire language is revolved around masculine and feminine word associations and how you break down verbs and the like. Their language isn't compatible with American-style gender identity. In fact, multiple friends of mine in Europe tell me this is manifestly an issue in English-speaking cultures like Great Britain and the United States and Canada, that the rest of Europe, it's not even really an issue for them. They don't take it really seriously, and a lot of it has to do with their entire language. But, of course, our language, too, is packed in around a hesitation to embrace this stuff, and yet they are here, and you get canceled for daring to suggest otherwise. Well, France, they're having none of it.
You can follow Erick around social media at
A listener sent me a note and said that it's just kind of funny. The theaters are closed. Broadway is closed. But if you want real good theater, all you got to do is tune into C-SPAN and watch this impeachment trial today. And the listener is correct. Absolutely correct. It is theater, which is why I dealt with it in the first hour and really don't have a ton of plans to go back to it. But there is this. A North Fulton County teenager was arrested Friday by the FBI and is accused of assaulting a federal officer, civil disorder, and several other charges after he was identified at last month's attack on the U.S. Capitol. Authorities said Monday night. Bruno Joseph Chua is charged with 5 counts related to the January 6th incident in which a group of people stormed the Capitol while members of Congress were working to certify the election. The charges against the 18-year-old include assault on a federal officer, civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, entering a restricted building, and violently demonstrating on Capitol grounds. The Milton teen is one of nearly 200 individuals charged thus far in the Capitol breach cases by the Department of Justice. Here's a screenshot of something he put on Instagram. Yes, for everyone asking, I stormed the Capitol with hundreds of thousands of patriots. I'll do a whole video explaining what happened. This is history. What happened was unbelievable. Yes, we physically fought our way in. That's from his social media page. An FBI spokesman confirmed that a search warrant was executed at Chua's home in Milton, but said the teen was not arrested there. The FBI's criminal complaint against Chua includes posts from social media in which he says he was present at the U.S. Capitol building that day. He posted on his Instagram story that he was. The complaint document, available to the public on the U.S. Attorney's website, also includes a series of still photos taken from video of the insurrection. Each photo identifies Chua with a red circle, showing him on the floor of the Senate chamber, making his way through the halls of the Capitol building. In one still photo taken from closed-circuit security cameras, Chua is shown carrying what appears to be a baton in his right hand. In addition to posting from the Capitol on January 6th, Chua broadcast his intentions on social media in the days leading up to it. More than a week prior, he published posts on social media on Parler saying President Trump is calling us to fight. This isn't a joke. This is where and when we make our stand. Hashtag January 6th. Chua has been recognized in the past for voicing his support for President Trump. In the AJC's political coverage following Election Day, the teen was photographed unfurling a giant Trump 2020 flag during a rally in the parking lot of the Georgia Republican Party headquarters in Buckhead. According to a brief in the Milton Herald, Chua was cited for violating the city's public disturbance ordinance in December after driving around the Birmingham Falls Elementary parking lot and blaring an air horn with a large Trump flag attached to his truck. He reportedly told Milton officers he wasn't doing donuts, but said he had to pick up some speed to get his flag to flap in the wind. The teen's arrest comes as federal agents continue their efforts to round up those who took part in the attack that left 5 people dead, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. Roseanne Boylan, a 34-year-old Trump supporter from Kennesaw, was also killed after being crushed when the crowd attempted her. Where was this guy's parents? I'm sorry, where was this kid's parents? He's 18 years old. Where were his parents? People need their parents involved in their lives, and my goodness gracious. We'll be back. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. I'm so glad to have you with me. It is 6 after the hour, and the phone number, if you want to call in, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I gotta begin with this buzzy clip. Now, listen, I'm sure that during the week we will talk some more about the impeachment trial. It is news. This is a news program. But I gotta tell you that I don't really consider it a lot of news. If the Democrats considered a lot of news, they would actually go through the motions of having witnesses like they wanted last time, and they're not doing that, which tells me they know they just want to move on. They're ready to get back to confirmation hearings and stimulus plans and the like. They don't want to be tied up on this, so I'm not sure why we should spend more time than they are. But as news happens, I'll cover it. But I want to go to this. This is an exchange between Pete Ducey, Steve Ducey's son from Fox News, who is a great reporter, Pete is, and this is Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. You got to listen to this.
Hey, Jen, I do have a question on filter, but first on energy. When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
But you said that they would be getting green jobs, so I'm just asking when that happens. Richard Trumka, who is a friend, longtime friend of Joe Biden, says about that day one Keystone EO, he says, I wish he, the president, had paired that more carefully with the thing that he did second by saying, here's where we are creating the jobs. So there's partial evidence from Richard Trumka.
Well, you didn't include all of his interview. Would you like to include the rest?
So how about this? The Laborers International Union of North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs.
Well, what Mr. Trumka also indicated in the same interview was that President Biden has proposed a climate plan with transformative investments in infrastructure and laid out a plan that will not only create millions of good union jobs, but also help tackle the climate crisis. And as the president has indicated when he gave his primetime address to talk about the American Rescue Plan, he talked about his plans to also put forward a jobs plan in the weeks or months following. And he has every plan to do exactly that.
So basically, you prove that these people aren't going to get jobs. The burden should be on the White House. Here's the thing. On day one, braggadociously, the Democrats come in and Joe Biden exceeds Donald Trump's executive orders in just a matter of days. The Democrats who said Donald Trump was a totalitarian, authoritarian tyrant, doing everything out of the executive branch, were glad when Joe Biden did. And, you know, when the Republicans get back in and do the same thing, the media will be just condemning them for doing exactly as Joe Biden did. Like, for example, you know, remember George W. Bush fired U.S. attorneys and it was a scandal, even though he had every right to do it. And then when Barack Obama fired Bush's, they got a pass. Donald Trump fires Obama's. He gets condemned. Well, today Joe Biden is firing all of Donald Trump's, and the media gives him a pass. This is where we've come as a country. The media that claims to be fair and balanced and nonpartisan is highly partisan, highly charged. Everybody knows it, and at this point, we're just mad the media won't admit it. And here comes Joe Biden and immediately wipes out jobs in the middle of a global pandemic. Middle of a decline in jobs in this country, wanting to do a massive stimulus package to the unemployed. And by the way, are these people going to be negatively impacted because of their taxes? Because they're about to go on the unemployment line. And will they get compensation? I don't know that they will, given the way it's tied to taxes. Even though Joe Biden just rendered them all unemployed. And the media is okay with it. And here comes Jen Psaki when Pete Ducey calls her on it, and Trumka, a union boss, lamenting the loss of these jobs, claiming that in a future at a point uncertain, with jobs uncertain, Joe Biden plans to create a green revolution. And she's like, well, prove they won't get jobs. And he's like, oh, she owned the Fox guy. You know, there were some people, I thankfully was not among them, who genuinely believed that the media would go back to being fair when Joe Biden came. No, they were finally completely broken during the age of Donald Trump, and they have no intention of being nonpartisan. They are fully in. There are reporters who I know, I'm trying not to say names, but there are reporters I know who I like, who I've always considered to be fair, and I'm like, when did you just decide to get on board the Democratic talking points and cheerlead aside? Because it's happening more and more. And there's also a failure to be honest about the economic impact of what's going to happen with the stimulus plan. I want to read for you a quote, but before I do, I want to play this one more soundbite from Jen Psaki.
Adjustments, or there could be adjustments to the ARP. One component of that that was really important as far as the campaign promise was the $15 minimum wage. The president has already signaled that may not make it into the full package. How important is that measure still to the White House, and how will you get it done? And then also the other thing that came up this weekend is looking at tweaking the level of who gets the stimulus checks. And Janet Yellen mentioned 60,000. Can you explain who gets left out, right? You know, if you get the 60, if you know, who is between the 60,000 and the 75,000?
Sure. Well, in the first question, the president remains firmly committed to raising the minimum wage to $15. That's why he put it in his first legislative proposal. And he believes that any American who is working a full-time job, trying to make ends meet, should not be at the poverty level. And it's important to him that the minimum wage is raised. He was referring this weekend to, as you noted in your question, the parliamentary process. Obviously, it's the most likely path at this point is through a reconciliation process. There is a parliamentarian who will make decisions about what can end up in a final package. And that was certainly what he was referencing in his comments. In terms of what the options are, we'll see what the parliamentarian decides, and then we'll see what additional options are, but we're getting a little ahead of where we are at this point in the process. I'm sure we can continue to have a discussion about it in here.
The Congressional Budget Office, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to say the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office determined that the raising of the minimum wage would add $58 billion to the deficit, which means it probably can't get through on reconciliation. It would lift some people out of poverty, but would cause other people to become unemployed. It would actually increase unemployment, even though it elevates some people out of poverty, would cause unemployment to go up, and would add to the deficit and the national debt overall when you account for all of these things. Even the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says raising the minimum wage causes unemployment. So it's probably going to be dead. Joe Biden himself has said it probably can't happen through reconciliation. Now, my point with all of this is, I have mentioned being in the stock market and buying stock like Afria. Look, don't take investment advice from me, please. I say that at the beginning. I actually sold today Afria, which is continuing to go up. It's having a great run. It's the marijuana company out of Canada that bought Sweetwater, the brewery in Atlanta. It's not in the U.S. yet. It's going through a merger. The merger favors the company it's merging with over its shares. And I just decided I feel like we're definitely in a bubble of some kind. The stock market at this point has no rational reason for continuing to go up in light of all the economic numbers and this plan coming from the Democrats. Again, don't take investment advice from me. This is my own personal opinion of things, that at this point the markets continue to break records despite a global pandemic, despite new strains of the virus, despite increased unemployment or barely any employment, and despite this massive stimulus plan from the Democrats, which Larry Summers says is going to raise inflation, which will cause interest rates to go up, which will crash the economy. Now, Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winning economist who has just gone completely bat poop crazy leftist, says Larry Summers is wrong and we should go for broke, go for big, treat this like a natural disaster, and just spend as much money as Washington wants. Larry Summers' argument is that we're putting more money into the economy than is needed with this stimulus plan from the Democrats, $1.9 trillion, that they're putting more money month to month into the economy than the economy needs. That's going to give people more take-home pay being unemployed than they would be if they were employed. That's going to cause them to spend more, not actually save. That's going to cause the economy to heat up too rapidly, which is going to cause wages to have to go up as the people attract workers, which is going to cause prices to go up, which is going to cause an inflationary event as people are spending too much and prices are having to go up as things are passed along to consumers at the price line. And it's going to ultimately hurt the economy and could spring a recession before the midterm elections. And Paul Krugman comes out and says, nope, 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 nope. Wrong. I want to read for you a quote from Paul Krugman. It's from 1998, to put it in proper context. As the internet is coming out, Paul Krugman, who says, don't believe Larry Summers, we're not going to cause a recession, there's not going to be inflation, we got plenty of slack in the markets and in the system to handle all of this. Go big or go home. This is Paul Krugman from 1998. The growth of the internet will slow drastically as the flaw in Metcalfe's law, which states that the number of potential connections in a network is proportional to the square of the number of participants, becomes apparent. Most people have nothing to say to each other. By 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. Let me read you this again from Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize winning economist. The growth of the internet will slow drastically. Most people have nothing to say to each other. By 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. That's Paul Krugman, who is now saying Larry Summers is wrong, that the Democrats should go big or go home, that they should do a $1.9 trillion stimulus package, and they don't need to worry about inflation. They don't need to worry about interest rates. They don't need to worry about any of this stuff. Do you want to trust Paul Krugman, who believed that, quote, the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines, or will become clear by 2005, the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines? Or do you want to trust Larry Summers? Paul Krugman, I mean, he got a Nobel Prize in economics, but he's also, at this point, so hard-charging partisan on the left that I'm not sure Joe Biden could do something progressive and have Paul Krugman not cheer it on. I'm altering my positions in the markets. And again, I'm not an investment advisor. Don't take investment advice from me. And friends of mine are asking me, I've had a number of stocks that have done very, very well, and they're going up today, and I've sold them. I would rather pay off some debts and stockpile some cash, just for things that may be coming. And the fact that Democrats can't help themselves when, by the way, privately, many of them agree that Larry Summers is right, but they can't help themselves. And now you've got them trying to also rush through getting rid of student loan debt and also jacking up the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And now, of course, we'll get into this when we come back. They're screaming racism about tips in restaurants. They want to put all restaurants on the $15 an hour minimum wage, and on it goes. As much as people like to say from the left that Republicans kind of broke with reality in the age of Trump, The Democrats are breaking with economic reality here, and we're all going to pay a price. And they don't really care, but it'll come back to bite them. And it should with what they're doing.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. There's another recipe going out tomorrow. I have no idea what it is, but you should text recipe to 33777 if you want to subscribe to the recipe list. I like to cook and I like to share my recipes. I got to put my wing recipe out there in any event. I got to play you a clip. This is the Jane Castor. She's the mayor of Tampa. The media is outraged by the maskless people at the Super Bowl. Listen to the mayor of Tampa.
Everyone knows that simply wearing a mask dramatically reduces the spread of COVID-19. And I'm proud to say that the majority of individuals that I saw out and about enjoying the festivities associated with the Super Bowl were complying. You know, we had tens of thousands of people all over the city. Downtown, out by the stadium, Ybor City, down here in Channelside, and very, very few incidents. So I'm proud of our community, but those few bad actors will be identified, and the Tampa Police Department will handle it. There just has to be that level of personal responsibility. You can supply everyone with a mask, advise them of the science behind it, and expect that they are going to abide by the mask order. Again, you're going to find a few that don't. The majority that I saw were wearing masks.
Look, y'all know if you've listened to me, if you've listened to me on this program for more than a year, I've relatively been pro-mask. I've tried to explain when they were first saying don't wear a mask, why they changed, when they changed, acknowledging that part of it was they weren't being honest because they needed people to not have a run on masks and hoard them, all of that. But I had on the Surgeon General and actually probed him on this issue last year on why the change. Was it dishonest to begin with? I asked him those tough questions. He gave good answers, I thought. The President Trump's Surgeon General, I thought, handled himself very well there, pushing on this issue. I'm pro-mask. This is ludicrous. The shaming of people not wearing masks. And on both sides, there are jerks on both sides. The woman who, there's a video of her, she was yelling at a person working a cash register in a grocery store who was asking the lady to put on a mask. Just put on the mask. It's about loving your neighbor. But this level of shaming people, being a jerk to people because they're doing something different, and the amount of self-righteousness in these people. Well, they're going to spread the virus to other people. I could get sick because of them. Yeah, you're right. You could get sick because of them. You could also stay 6 feet away from them and wash your hands. You could also, when you see them coming, go elsewhere. Choose not to go to those businesses. Well, they're still going to spread it in the community. And well, actually, the data shows that it's the virus is going down pretty dramatically everywhere else. I just, at this point, all you're doing is you're making people like me, who has been since January of last year talking about this, warning people it was coming, telling people to take it seriously, telling people wash your hands, keep your distance, wear a mask, explaining how masks work, why masks are good, not to believe all the people who say they don't work, why those people are wrong, explaining all this. You're making me say, you know what, screw it. It is absolutely in reaction to these people who want to shame others who disagree with them. Show some grace on all sides. I just have no use for the bullies out there on either side on this issue. And what people are doing is they're making emotional responses based on what other people are doing, as opposed to just doing what they should do. Whatever happened to live and let live? Nobody wants to do that anymore. And these mass shaming bullies are getting on my nerves. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Y'all, I put this off and I put this off, and yep, I need to read this to you. We need to discuss the snowplow. I meant to talk about this yesterday. We never got there. I got to do it today. We must discuss the snowplow. Virginia Heffernan she's a columnist in the Los Angeles Times. Some might, I would not, but some I've seen make jokes about her, part of her last name, given this column. We won't go there. Oh, heck no. The Trumpites next door to our pandemic getaway, who seem as devoted to the ex-president as you can get without being QAnon fans, just plowed our driveway without being asked and did a great job. How am I going to resist demands for unity in the face of this act of aggressive niceness? Of course, on some level, I realize I owe them thanks, and man, it really looks like the guy back-dragged the driveway like a pro, but how much thanks? These neighbors are staunch partisans of blue lives, and there aren't a lot of anything other than white lives in the neighborhood. This is also kind of weird. Back in the city, people don't sweep other people's walkways for nothing. Maybe it's like what Eddie Murphy discovered in that old Saturday Night Live sketch, White Like Me. He goes undercover in white makeup and finds that when white people are among their own, they pop free champagne and live the high life. As Murphy puts it, slowly I began to realize that when white people are alone, they give things to each other for free. Hezbollah, the Shiite Islamist political party in Lebanon, also gives things away for free. The favors Hezbollah does for people in the cities Tyre and Sidon probably don't involve snowplows, but like other mafias, Hezbollah tends to its own. The Shiite sick, elderly, and hungry. They offer protection and hospitality and win loyalty that way. And they also demand devotion to their brutal us versus them anti-Sunni cause. Some of us are family, the favors say. The rest are infidels. The same is true with Louis Farrakhan, who currently helms the Nation of Islam. While the Southern Poverty Law Center classifies him as a dangerous anti-Semite, much of his flock says he's just a little screwy and unfailingly magnanimous to them. When someone helps you when you're down or snowed in, it's almost impossible to regard them as a blight on the world. In fact, you're more likely to be overwhelmed with gratitude and convinced of the person's inherent goodness. You might end up like the upper middle class family I stayed with in France as a teenager. They did not attend a citywide celebration for the 100th anniversary of Charles de Gaulle, the war hero who orchestrated the liberation of his country from Nazi Germany in 1944. They did have several portraits of Philippe Pétain, the Nazi collaborator, on their wall. When I screwed up the courage to ask how it was for them during the occupation, the lady of the house replied, "We were happy because the Nazis were very polite. I didn't know the word. I excused myself. I was in tears when I found the entry polite. So when I accept generosity from my pandemic neighbors, acknowledging the legitimate kindness with a wave or a plate of cookies, am I also sealing us in as fellow travelers who are very polite to each other, but not so much to them? Loving your neighbor is evidently much easier when your neighborhood is full of people just like you. What do you do about the Trumpites around us? Like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who spoke eloquently this week about her terrifying experience during the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th, Americans are expected to forgive and forget before we're even stitching up our wounds or gotten our vaccines against the pandemic that former President Trump utterly failed to mitigate. My neighbor supported a man who showed near murderous contempt for the majority of Americans. They kept him in business with their support, but the plowing. On January 6th, after the insurrection, Senator Ben Sasse issued an all-shucks plea for all Americans to love their neighbors. The United States, he said, isn't Hatfields and McCoys, the blood feud forever, and he added, you can't hate someone who shovels your driveway. At the time, I seethed. The Capitol had just been desecrated, but maybe my neighbor heard Sasse and was determined to make a bid for reconciliation. So here's my response to my plowed driveway for now. Politely, but not profusely, I'll acknowledge the Sassian move. With a wave and a thanks, a minimal start on building back trust, I'm not ready to knock on the door with a covered dish yet. I also can't give my neighbors absolution. It's not mine to give. Free driveway work, as nice as it is just not the same currency as justice and truth. To pretend it is would be a lie, and they probably aren't looking for absolution anyway. But I can offer a standing invitation to make amends, not with a snowplow, but by recognizing the truth about the Trump administration, and more important, by working for justice for all those whom the administration harmed. Only when we work shoulder to shoulder to repair the damage of the last 4 years will we even begin to dig out of the storm. These people did a nice thing. They plowed this woman's driveway. She writes, man, it really looks like the guy back-dragged the driveway like a pro. They did a great job. She then goes on to compare them to Hezbollah, a terrorist group, Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, the Nazi occupation force in France. This is a damning indictment on her, not them. And she and her fans don't even realize it. Virginia Heffernan is not a nice person. She only wants to meet people on her terms. She makes no understanding or attempt to understand why they may disagree. She views Donald Trump as an existential evil, as a threat, and therefore all of his supporters must be. She lives in a bubble and now comes into contact with people not of her bubble who happen to be very opposite what she believes, and they happen to be neighborly people. And what does she want? She wants them to work for justice and truth according to what she believes justice and truth are. She wants them to work to repair the last 4 years. She wants them to admit they sinned, not against her, but against the nation or some such. Loving your neighbor is evidently much easier when your neighborhood is full of people just like you. Now, I got to say something here. Love your neighbor. Matthew 22. Let me pull it up for you because I think this is important. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's from the Gospel of Matthew. You can find it also in Luke or in Mark. Leviticus 19 also says, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. What this woman is trying to do, it's what a lot of people do, and it's not just on the left. People on the right do it as well, is they try to find carve-outs, exceptions, loopholes, exceptions to the rule that prove the rule, what have you. They try to find a way to weasel out of loving their neighbor. But there's something larger at stake here, too, that we all need to understand, because this is a phenomenon on the left, particularly the woke adherents. What do we do about the Trumpites around us? I accept generosity from my pandemic neighbors, acknowledging the legitimate kindness with a wave or a plate of cookies. Am I also sealing us in as fellow travelers who are very polite to each other, but not so much to them? My neighbors supported a man who showed near murderous contempt for the majority of Americans. They kept him in business with their support, but the plowing. Here's my response to my plowed driveway for now. Politely, but not profusely, I'll acknowledge the sassy and move with a wave and a thanks, a minimal start on building back trust. I'm not ready to knock on the door with a covered dish yet. Nobody was asking you to, and I bet you're a terrible cook. I also, and pay attention to this one, I also can't give my neighbors absolution. It's not mine to give, she says. Well, they don't need it. They don't want it. This woman, and this is, again, both sides do this. This isn't just of the left. People on the right do this as well. They make themselves more consequential and important than they actually are. So I'm a radio show host. Surprise! You're listening to me on the radio. I write. I interact between syndicated columns and radio show and my daily Substack newsletter and website and social media. I more than likely come into contact with about 1 million people a day, if not more. And yet I'm a guy in Macon, Georgia, sitting in my office talking to y'all. Got a wife, I've got 2 kids, I've got a dog, I got a mortgage. I am humbled every day by different circumstances. None of us should make more of ourselves than we are. And sometimes you view yourself as larger than you are, as connected to something greater than yourself beyond just the church. You're with a political movement. You're tied into social justice. You believe something, but sometimes you just got to humble yourself and recognize, you know what? I'm a person who's got neighbors. And I can't fix the world. I can't save the world, but I can save my relationship with the people next door. I can look to my neighborhood and, hey, we don't all agree. I've got neighbors who are Democrats and I've got neighbors who are Republicans, and I shouldn't care. The fact that this woman cares about her neighbor's politics and she imputes her hatred of the other side's politics on her neighbor in particular, on her neighbor, they're part of it, they're part to blame, actually is a damning indictment on her. Because she has made manifest politics as greater than politics should be. Now, her neighbors may have as well. She certainly knows all about their Trump views. Oh, is it from an unfurled Trump flag or what? But it doesn't matter. She values herself more than her neighbors. Her neighbors did something nice for her, and she gets a column out of this in the Los Angeles Times that a whole lot of people are talking about because they do something nice for her, and she compares them to a terrorist group, to the Nation of Islam and the Nazis. And she doesn't see anything wrong with that because she believes herself better than them. And the most authoritarian movements are the ones that view people as better than the other. And so the irony here is that while she views them as being part of a totalitarian movement bad for this country, she herself is part of a totalitarian movement bad for this country. She believes that she has greater value, and her views do. And what a terrible person to go write in the Los Angeles Times about a neighbor's kindness and then compare them to the Nazis. those neighbors will eventually find out. There's so much buzz about this column, they'll eventually connect it. They'll eventually figure it out. They'll eventually understand it's about them. Here they have been nice to this woman, and look how she treats them. Look how she behaves to them. It's a damning indictment of her. She's not a good person. And she thinks less of them when actually we should all think less of her. This is who she is. Someone who implies Nazism in a kind act. Someone who makes manifest politics in spheres where it's not supposed to be. Scripture says love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Sometimes it's hard, but you got to do it. Whether she believes or not, she should do it. She should love her neighbor. And by the way, when you love the neighbor, you don't love the neighbor on your terms. You don't love them on anybody's terms. You just love them. You love the fact that you have moved to a place where your neighbors think of plowing your driveway in the snow because you don't have a plow. And you thank them, and when you can't agree with them on politics, you find common ground elsewhere. That she doesn't even want to try is on her, not on them. And those who would praise her for this position, those who would make manifest these sorts of views, they're the people you have to worry about, because they're the ones who bring you the horrors of the secular religions of the world, from communism to Nazism. They're the ones who bring you the mass murder over time, because they really do decide they're the better ones. They're the ones who ultimately are the ones who turn the blind eye to the horrors of what the communists have done. They're the ones who turn their eyes to the horror of the cultural revolutions of the world, because they decide that they're better than the other side and that the other side is more dangerous than them. And so they become exactly what they say the other side is, and then become worse. And everyone in the media applauds them as they do it.
You're listening to The Erick Erickson Show, the perfect blend.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. It's too late for you to call because we only have a few minutes left, and that's okay. There's an internet expansion coming to Middle Georgia. This is actually very good news across the state. The governor's office announced Monday it would be expanding broadband internet services to over 80,000 homes and businesses in 18 Middle Georgia counties. Governor Kemp, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, and Speaker Ralston made the announcement at the state capitol that Central Georgia Electric Membership Corporation and Southern Rivers Energy will form a new partnership with Connexon, a full fiber service broadband provider. The announcement we're making today will have a real impact on the lives of countless Georgians. The partnership includes an investment of more than $210 million overall, and they're going to spread fiber over 6,890 miles. It'll bring improved electric service, increased reliability through smart grid capabilities, and a lot of good fiber. It'll impact Bibb County, Butts, Clayton, Coweta, Crawford, Fayette, Henry, Jasper, Jones, Lamar, Meriwether, Monroe, Morgan, Newton, Pike, Putnam, Spalding, and Upson County. That reminds me, there's a special judicial election today in the Griffin Judicial Circuit. That is Pike, Upson, Fayette, and Spalding counties. This is good news. So I live in North Bibb County. We've got a Cox business line in, but it's no disrespect to Cox because we use them. I put a business line in the house because I thought I'd have greater stability, wouldn't blow through the caps, but I wound up having to get an AT&T fiber line in for the show. So I've got a residential fiber line for the show and then a business line for the rest of the house for the kids and my wife and all to use so we don't blow through all the caps. We were getting those annoying messages from Cox saying that we were going through the residential package caps. And then they said they wouldn't slow down the internet. And remarkably, every time we got one of those, the internet slowed down, even though they said they weren't slowing it down. Weird. So I got an AT&T fiber line, and I am super impressed with it. But now Philip, who does all the digital stuff for me, he's actually sitting on my front porch using my Wi-Fi because he's got a company, Zeno or something, in southern Monroe County. And they do cable and they do internet, and their internet is just ridiculously bad, particularly for their upload speeds. And so he's got to sit on my front porch and use my Wi-Fi to upload video because his internet's bad. And, I was looking at land up in Monroe County in the Bolingbrook area. If this show ever makes it large, I would love to go up there, but the internet is terrible up there. Terrible, terrible. Before I get out of here, this hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. They're our longest advertiser. We thank them very much. And if you are involved in a business and the financing of a business, please consider reaching out to them. Go to firstlibertyga.com. So many banks are telling so many people and businesses no right now. First Liberty wants to help you get to yes with your deals. Go to firstlibertyga.com. That's firstlibertyga.com. That is their website. You can find their contact info. And if you need a loan, $500,000 and higher for your business, go to firstlibertyga.com. See if they can work with you.